And we're back. Welcome back to part 2. My guest, Nichole Sorensen. And we are talking about stuff and things. Hey.
So what?
Hey, what's up?
Not much.
Part 2.
Part 2.
I don't even know, man. I don't even know.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Did you know that the majority of old porn stars retire to Southern Utah?
They do.
It's because it's warm.
It's also because it's quiet and there's nobody there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all have children, and they don't want people to be like, I saw your mother in that film last year.
Oh my goodness. The first time I made love to my hand,
it was to your mom.
To your mother. And boy, did she have some great boobies. God, how awkward would that be?
That would be sad.
Seeing your mom on something? Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh, Mom. Why? Why are you doing this?
Well, son, I had to make money somehow.
I had
And
tuition.
at the time, I had tuition, and
And a mortgage.
Not a good idea. I had low self-esteem.
Yeah. Besides, his black snake made me moan. Ew. Gross. Why'd I go there? I immediately regret that last sentence. Cheerfully retracted.
Cheerfully retracted.
Now, no one can be mad at me.
Well, they can, but they can't. They're not going to do anything.
They can, but they gotta fuck themselves. Is
Right.
what it is. Okay. So, when you started getting into the occult, what kind of drawed you to it?
Like, say that one more time.
When you started getting into the occult, what kind of drawed you to it?
Well, at the time, I thought of myself as a theologian,
Uh-huh.
a self-proclaimed theologian.
I think there's a lot of self-proclaimed
There are.
theologians.
And I thought, well, and then you have to remember that I grew up in an LDS state
Right.
where, the less information they give you, the better off, because if you
Yeah.
know shit, then
Yeah.
that's bad.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to know all the other shit.
Right.
Like, I wanted to know everything else. And
Mhm.
paganism, it's something that people believed in for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's something that worked for them. And then witches, in Salem were persecuted. People were persecuted,
Yeah.
innocent or otherwise, because, they lived outside of the town.
Yeah.
and used the herbs from the land to basically be their vitamins,
Yeah.
or their medication.
And every culture throughout the world who has people living outside of the big city, who live in the forest, who live by the forest, in the more rural areas and that, there's a term called folk magic, and they all kind of practice a different variation of folk magic. Mm-hmm. But the more you study them, the more similar they all kind of sound. Yeah. Not only that, but their folklore will be really similar.
Yep.
They all have stories about large, hairy humans walking through the forest, that sort of thing, eating animals and that kind of thing, whether it be a Wendigo or a Sasquatch.
Yep.
And throughout the world. And way before people started, way before the internet, way before technology really took over, way before the Industrial Revolution kind of thing, you had people practicing this. Oh, you have this sickness, you need to go find this and this plant and mix them together. And, there's probably a hex or not a hex, but a spell or something to coincide with that practice.
Well, and for during the between the 1500s and the early 1900s, late 1800s.
Yeah.
The biggest fear and the biggest reason that somebody was a witch was because of those exact things, because they used the land to heal their individuals. The Salem witch trials is based off of bad essentially bad wheat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People ate bad crops, and it made them hallucinate. And
Well-
that is what got all these women killed, essentially.
Well, it was especially given to women when they're during like their menstruation cycle, wasn't it? It's something related to that.
Yeah, and I think some women realized that the crops were bad because if you're in that, if you do work with herbs,
Yeah.
you can tell when a crop's not good or when you have a crop that doesn't taste right or whatever. And I'm sure some of those ladies took advantage of that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just like anything else. But there's this whole, I think it's funny that there's this whole, like, oh, the women of Salem, like all these pagans are coming forward now to be like, you burned my ancestors. And I'm like, okay. All right. Like, how far are you going to take this?
Yeah. Well, like even with people that study survivalism and like medicinal and edible like plants along Uinta Mountains and the Wasatch Front here in Utah, like you can tell immediately what is edible and what is not if it's super bitter and if it tastes bad, like really bad, like this is fucked up tasting, you don't eat it. If it's too bitter, you don't eat it. If it's really rank, you don't eat it. And that's always like been kind of a survivalist tactic on what's edible and what's not. And I think that actually came from like the mountain men.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Utah is full of old mountain men. They still have rendezvous and stuff just to keep the traditions of the mountain men going. You know what I mean? So, yeah, like if something's bitter or something's like really foul, you don't eat it. But also there was like, I think there was also like money involved in the whole Salem witch trials because when we were in there, I was asking some older folks, so where were the witches actually hung? And they would tell me, I think it was around where the Salem hospital's built. And the area outside of Salem, the real rural area, is called Danvers. And Danvers is a really lush area. But the thing about the people that settled weren't necessarily well off financially, but they had land. But the people that were more coming in, like the Puritans and shit, they were coming in, they had a bit of money, but they didn't have the land. So I think it was kind of a perfect storm of the rotten crop and all that going on, and it was fed to women during menstruation, and then also people taking advantage of that situation and saying, hey, here's a way for us to get those two executed in the name of God, and we could take their property, because any of the property of people that were executed didn't go to the next of kin, because their next of kin were either children or their next of kin didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So there was no next of kin to really worry about. It would be transferred over to the local government. Local government was run by the church. Church could decide, oh, you know, Reverend so-and-so gets to take this big piece of land, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, that's always just kind of what it boils down to is money.
Well, and the church was super corrupt then. Like,
but yeah, that was, I think it was just kind of like one of those perfect storms of like all of that shit happening at the same time.
yeah. Well, and politics and religion were huge back then because you had priests and pastors that were
Pastors or pastors?
Pastors that were that were into both.
Yeah.
So they got to decide how the town ran and also decide how religion ran.
The people who did the church were the people with the power.
Yeah.
But like the origins of like Christianity, of all of that early stuff, that was all like witchcraft.
So yeah, from an orthodoxy understanding,
right?
What I've learned, going to church with my kids and stuff, has been that they don't at least in Orthodox Christianity, they realized that the other gods existed.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, like it's not like the King James version of the Bible where it's like cut and dry, and there were there was other shit going on, and I hope I'm not slandering this theology too bad, but basically, in their version, God comes and asks and says, basically, you should only worship one, just one. Don't make any more sacrifices. It's a mess.
Yeah.
And then that's how it kind of started.
Yeah.
Where paganism kind of went to the background.
Yeah.
And then, depending on what religion you are, because some are more extreme than others, you get your Southern Baptists are like
hellfire and brimstone, very black and white.
Yeah, and then you get like the LDS who, basically are
wrote the third sequel to the Bible.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's whatever.
Well, history has proof that they were all on drugs while they were doing that.
Yeah.
And yet we still have the Mormons.
Yeah. That's okay. I like Mormons.
What I don't, it's like they, la 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 la.
Yeah.
Ear, fingers and ears.
Yeah. Well, the diffusionist theory about people coming over in boats well before like the year 1000. Even the Smithsonian was like, "You gotta be fucking kidding, right?"
Right.
They're like, "This is not possible.
Right.
No one had the technology. The Vikings had it. That's it."
Right.
But whatever.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that each culture, and especially in America like can take a culture and totally water it down, or they can like make it flourish.
Yeah.
Just depending on the situation. But the Vikings were pretty awesome people. They did. They they taught their women how to fight.
Oh yeah.
And their women were just as much as an important warrior as the men, but they also had to have kids.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
Anyway, we were talking about the Vikings for You Abused My Child.
Yeah. I pushed my chair out and your kid just ran right into it, conveniently.
He wasn't looking where he's going.
But yeah, the Vikings were awesome because they had, they taught their women how to fight. Their women also had to have kids. They had to maintain the home. So women had like 3 different jobs. The guys were like, they had to farm. They had to find food if their farms didn't work.
Yeah.
If they couldn't fish. I mean, everybody was an equal, and like it's totally cool to read about that.
Yeah. I think that kind of drew me in, and that and like just my own family coming from Finland and that, so it kind of drew me into learning more about Finland, and like there's always like a mixture of Norwegian in any Finnish family and that, but it's funny how much you study that and you're reminded of like, at least in my personal like learning, I'm reminded of like Native Americans and how similar these people were, and some of them live in Scandinavia and some of them lived in North America, but just to honor the earth and take care of the earth and the gods and honor your ancestors, and that was basically their entire life, is like, whether you're talking about the Navajo or the Cheyenne or the Norse or the people in Finland, their ancestors wore their hierarchy and pantheon of gods and stuff, Here we are with kids.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Being all weird. But there's a really great like kind of saying going around right now with like a Sawtrue and people kind of like me in the same like mental wavelength. The saying is, we are the ancestors now.
Yeah.
So you think about all the kids coming up when we're grandparents and what we're teaching our kids now and what they're going to teach their kids and what they're going to teach their kids and how to conduct yourself as a person, because the word ancestor to me, I don't know, it's more sacred to me than like priest or god or guru or like any of that stuff. Like ancestor, that is part of your bloodline, but it's a person that has had experiences and all kinds of things like that that is trying to teach you and your family members that come before you proper conduct and how to survive and live a good life.
Yeah. Well, and so cultures too, like culturally, I think it's important because, like, when you're learning about your ancestors, I think it's important because those things play into like how you raise your kids.
Yeah.
And like you said, like we are the ancestors now. So, one of the reasons that I started taking the kids to my great-grandfather's church, to the Orthodox Church, is because 95% of Greeks are Orthodox Christians. So they have like all the superstitions, they have all the religion, they have all of that, and the language, all of that, and so it's very traditional, but not. It's pretty close to being Catholic. Like, you know, if you were a Catholic and you were to go to an Orthodox Christian church, you'd still be able to take communion.
Yeah.
But they have differences. They have different beliefs on like the Nicene Creed and a couple other things.
Right.
So, but they still do ancestor worship in a way because they have an altar for whatever their saint is.
Yeah.
They have everyone is a family like everyone in the parish is a family member.
Yeah.
Like, whether they're actually blood related or not, they're still
part of the family.
So they do that, and then they have like a respect for the dead. Yeah. It's a great respect. They do memorials for their dead because they don't want you to forget them. They want you to remember them.
Of course.
In the occult, in paganism, like that's exactly what I was into, was remembering. Like I would, on my altar, I have my great grandfather because he taught me a lot. I mean, he only taught me 12 years worth of stuff.
Yeah.
But I still learned a lot from him. And you know.
Yeah, that's great, man.
But
was he from Greece?
Yeah.
So he was straight out of Greece?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he came straight out of Greece, and he was a really good businessman.
Uh-huh.
He bought a candy shop from one of the other Greeks that had moved to Utah.
Yeah.
And he was really a hard worker, and so, you know, like I think that's an important thing to teach our kids.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't teach their kids how to work
Yeah.
and run their own business, because you don't have to run your own business now. You just have to survive.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't want to teach my kids how to survive. I want to teach my kids how to hold their own in an economy that sucks and is going to get worse.
Yeah. And you can't trust it. You can't rely on it. And it's also not your responsibility, or it's your responsibility to take care of your own. It's bad to rely on a government to provide for you. That's not providing for your family. That's like relying on someone else, being at someone else's like mercy.
Yeah.
So fuck that.
Ooh, I got a scary story. I just thought of it. I should probably bring it up now.
Did we already do the ghost story?
No, we didn't. I'm going to tell you the ghost story now.
Okay, let's hear it.
I just realized So, after I got divorced, and I lived with my parents for a little while, and then I lived with a friend of mine, and I moved into, got to a point where I was financially sound, and I thought, well, I should move into my own place.
Yeah.
So I moved into this old Victorian house that got converted into apartments. And
Yeah.
There was only 2. It was a, bottom floor, top floor apartment.
Right.
There was it was just super ghetto.
Yeah. As every first apartment after
Right.
you get divorced is. Yeah.
Divorce makes your credit bad.
Boy.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. I don't care who you are.
Hard on you financially. No doubt about that.
But Tristan had a really scary incident.
Now, who's Tristan?
That's Shaggy. We call him Shaggy.
Well,
but
for
he's
our
my
listeners,
oldest
who the
son.
fuck is...
He's my oldest son.
Okay.
Sorry.
How old was he
I'm
at the
on
time?
Beer 3.
Yeah, she is. It's adorable. She's so sweet because James on Beer 3 is fine.
I know. Hey, did you hear that, James?
What? He doesn't listen to this.
I keep telling him he should. He's
I'm telling him.
I should listen to that, but I don't.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He's a total asshole.
Yeah.
Who we both love,
We do.
which is fine. Fuck you, James.
I move into this apartment with my son, and the first night he's...
How old is he?
At the time, he was only 3.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do roller.
Oh, goddamn.
I did roller derby at the time.
Mhm.
So I had a night where I had to practice, and it was about 3 weeks after we moved there, and he
Yeah.
would not sleep in his own bedroom
Yeah.
after the first night because he had seen a shadow man. He'd
Oh
seen a shadow man.
Goodness.
And of course, being the mom and the way I was raised was okay. Logic from, non-logic. Let's work this out.
It's a new place. You're not used to
Yeah.
it, so you're a little bit freaked out.
So I was like, Tristan, what if I slept in that room? And he's like, Mom, you do not want to see the man in black. And I was like, well,
Let me tell you something,
let
sweetheart.
me tell you something about the man in black.
I broke his bitch ass in.
So he was like, oh no, Mom, you don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
He's really scary. So I even went as far as, because one of the women I work with, she goes, oh, well, try this. Draw a door, and we'll paint it and make it a door, and tell him to tell the man in black to go, that he cannot come past that door. He has to go to the other side.
Okay.
It worked for 2 days.
Okay.
I had him paint the door with me and everything.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, cool. And it worked for 2 days. He slept in the room for 2 days, and that was it.
Yeah.
So the third night after the 2 days that it worked, I'm making dinner, and I had made a vegetable that he didn't like.
Yeah.
And I had asked, okay, sit down, it's time for you to eat. And he goes, I don't like this. And I was like, you need to eat it, it's good for you.
Mhm.
And he's like, in a different voice, and I'm going to totally shoot it to shit, but it was like, my name is Mr. B, and I don't like vegetables, or this type of vegetable, or whatever, for whatever reason.
Right.
But it was not his voice at all. It was like a totally different voice.
Yeah.
A totally it was a man's voice coming out of a child, like distorted, and it was super creepy.
Really?
It freaked me out.
Yeah.
And the way I was raised, because I just was like, fine. And because of what I believed in, fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to eat this vegetable. But if you're going to stay in my house, then you're going to follow my rules. You're going to do what I say. And that
So
is my
do you
son.
do you confront it right then and there?
Yeah, I didn't wait.
You didn't wait. You
Nope.
just
I
you're
just
like
confronted it.
yeah.
Because when I was being raised, and my great-grandfather had told me that, and my dad had told me that when something scares you, you confront it right off the bat. You don't wait. Because
Yeah.
if you don't confront it, then you're in worse trouble later than you would have been at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had confronted it,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't seen him or heard him since.
Yeah.
And it's been since he was 3, and he's now 12.
Yeah.
So
But it still kind of makes him a little bit.
it does. It makes Tristan uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable enough that he's asked that the priest come to the house to do a
No?
blessing on the house. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
I totally believe that anyone's up for grabs on possession. It doesn't matter if they're a kid or an adult.
Yeah.
And for kids, it's different because, they're so innocent, and like if they make a friend, whether it's alive or dead,
Yeah.
it's a friend.
Well, I think it's like if someone's open, and kids are very open because they're so fresh and new, they don't know what to be, I guess, closed or standoffish to. They don't have the guard and defenses up. So yeah, like it would make sense for like a kid or even a person that has like is going towards dementia or is really old, so a bit mentally vulnerable, and they're like, okay, I've been told I have the dementia or something like that. So maybe not everything I'm seeing is a problem.
Right.
So it makes them more open and less guarded.
Yes.
Like how you and I would be guarded because we're adults and we've seen a thing or two. So we're just like, if someone walks up and tells us some bullshit, we're like, cool, man, fuck off. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and it's like at the time, it scared me. Like I definitely was scared because when you hear somebody's voice coming out of your own child, it's not his voice.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Looney Bin stuff. That's
freaky.
Yeah, it's freaky, crazy people stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that it still makes him uncomfortable now,
Yeah.
he's 12, is...
So like 9 years later.
Yeah, it's 9 years later. I never brought it up with him except recently when I was like, oh, you should tell that story.
Yeah.
It was a couple years ago he brought it up because he actually asked me, he's like, I think Mr. B is back. And I was like, well, I'll do something to the house.
Yeah.
But then when we started going to church, the priest that we have is really nice and he's really kid friendly, and I think he's built a relationship with him.
Oh, okay.
So he's asked me if I would ask him to come into the house and bless the house.
What did you do when he told you he thinks he's back?
Oh, I went through and did...
Did you sage or?
Yeah, I don't use sage. I use Palo Santo because it smells better.
Okay.
And Palo Santo in folklore replaces... where sage just nullifies a situation, it just nullifies, it doesn't replace anything, it just takes away any negativity, but it doesn't, it takes away negativity, positive, like anything, it just nullifies the situation as I knocked
she knocked the mic, it was pretty funny. I like seeing Nichole after she's had a couple beers on this. I think this is just like
he's like, I'm gonna get something
this might just be like a regular thing now. Every weekend you bring the kids over. I'm gonna watch you try to explain things.
So Palo Santo, according to the folklore and the history behind it, it's
I know dick about it. I've never even heard of it, honestly.
It smells better for one to me.
Where do you get it?
At any metaphysical shop. They all sell it now.
Oh, okay.
Bryson's Rock Shop sells it in Ogden by like the droves.
I just do sage. That's all I've ever done is just sage.
As long as you're thinking positive and like the idea is to replace the negative with positive, then sage works really well. Yeah. But Palo Santo smells better, and it's been known to literally, if you don't have a positive thought to replace something, it literally just, the idea is that it does it for you.
Oh, okay.
So, but it mostly just smells better.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm not going to go through my house and go, oh, I need to replace this negative stuff. But you have to be thinking, like, what do I want to replace it with? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what am I replacing it with? Right.
I think we've had something in the house here. I don't know if I talked about it in our first podcast.
I can't remember what I made for you guys, but I made little things for you guys.
They were little drops of LSD on paper. We loved them. We boned like drugged fucking test bunnies. It was fantastic. We were seeing things. No, none of that is true. None of us break the law. No. But like truthfully, we've had a thing and we called it George, and so far it's pretty like benign. It's pretty like every once in a while something will turn on. We're like, what the fuck? Why is that turning on? It doesn't need to turn on. TV turns on, no one's by the remote, that sort of thing. And we're just like, all right, George, yeah, ha ha ha, you're funny. That sort of thing. But I don't know what I would do if it was like a really aggressive kind of like entity. And
I think a lot of
fuck
that
with my
helps
kid or
because
something,
You are your personality is, this is my house.
Yeah.
And screw you.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. And I think that is a huge thing in possession.
Yeah.
Tristan's very he's a nice kid. And he's super naive and he doesn't understand things.
Well, he's a kid.
And he's a kid.
He's a kid.
And so
it's the biggest thing.
I think the Man in Black was like the original Mr. B. And he was just like in his, this is the form I take with everybody else.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, man, I gotta shift that a little bit because, he's afraid of that.
Your mind's interpretation of things will fuck with you a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think just the fact that you're a kid is gonna come with some kind of naivete, no matter who you are, So I think that's kind of a big thing. But it could be a good thing though. You know what I mean? It could be look, man, you're a kid, but things in this world are unexplainable. Mm-hmm. You can address them and you can confront them and you could say, look, this is my life. You're not going to push me around and bully me, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You confront them,
Well, and with Tristan, it did show him. It was because I confronted it right off the bat. If I would have been just that stand-up Mormon girl,
right.
I would have freaked out. I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have gone to my bishop.
Well, what have you done? You would have gone to your bishop. You would have freaked out that night and cried in tears and everything.
He would have done nothing because he wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
LDS bishops don't get shown how to defeat demonic possession.
No, it's such a young religion. Right. They don't know how to deal with it.
And so, and I don't know how. I know that the Catholic priests, they have the Vatican, and they go through and they're like.
They have a whole process on how you do it. You do X, Y, and Z. Same with the Greek Orthodox. They've been around for so long. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, we've seen this before. We know you do X, Y, and Z, and that pretty much handles the situation.
Right.
So,
but. From how I was raised and how I was taught was, okay, you confront it, you're in charge, because if you're not in charge, it's going to walk all over you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I always think it's funny, all these, individuals who are like, oh, I'm going to, call up Lilith and this other demon, and I'm like, really? Are you really, or are you, are there drugs involved in that? I don't know. Or are you just, so...
Well, it's such a funny thing to even assume that you could call up Lilith.
Right, because
she would have the goddess of all demons. She's just going to show up in, Ogden, Utah and be like, yeah, let me handle this shit for you. I was doing nothing.
So, one of the ancestors, the entities that I was reading about for a really long time was Santa Muerta.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Because she goes, she helps the little guy.
We still celebrate Day of the Dead here in this house because my family's from, all my family's from Central America except for me.
Well, and I love that because it's, the Greeks, they have the respect for the date, your ancestors and stuff. And Dia de los Muertos is super amazing to me. Yeah. And so I'm reading about Santa Muerta, and the people who actually worship her have a humble respect for her.
Yeah.
She isn't just, you don't just call her up for anything.
Yeah.
You pay her respects. She doesn't just help, because the general consensus is she helps the drug dealers and stuff get out of things.
Yeah.
But it's not just
It's
them.
not that. It's the
little
downtrodden.
guy. Yeah, the downtrodden. And so there's a whole nother respect for that, because there's the poor homeless guy on the street that has nothing.
Yeah.
And she's going to help him out because
he'll crawl in homage to Santa Muerta.
And I always thought that was cool.
It's funny that, like, all over the world you'll see a deity like that, and always so similar that they'll be really similar, like in most aspects, especially in what they can benefit you, like give you benefit from. No matter what kind of like background you're from, there's so many similarities of like all these different like little deities that you could pray to or honor. And anytime Christianity or whatever like invaded that region, they would have to, the deity was so powerful, they would have to adopt them into their celebration in order to get the local townsfolk to even like pay homage,
Yeah.
And that's why like December 25th is on Bacchus's actual like, what is it, birthday or whatever, and now it's Jesus's birthday,
Yeah.
They always have to incorporate it because the people practicing outside of like the big city are so powerful that thank you, sweetie. Her daughter just handed me something. But yeah, like the people outside the town are so influential and powerful that they have to incorporate that into their like big city religion, the big power taking over,
Well, and a lot of like the Hebrew terms of the Bible get misinterpreted.
Yeah.
When they get interpreted to English. So like there's like 7 ways to say I love you in Greek. And so when the Greeks interpreted the Bible into Greek and Hebrew were pretty like normal languages for that time.
Oh yeah.
And then you got like the King James version of the Bible.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wait, just a second.
You English fuck. Wait.
Wait. That word really means respectful as opposed to damn you to hell. So it's interesting to like learn different theologies of different religions and like different cultures and their backgrounds, because they all have such different meanings and they don't all necessarily have the right interpretation. No. So you have to be careful. Like in studying the occult, I've learned that you have to be have a emptied respect, because I might be misinterpreting something that some other culture. It's like the Day of the Dead. You're respecting your ancestors, but some people interpret that as I'm like worshiping spirits, but it's not a worship at all.
No,
it's a respect.
It's the exact same thing that the Norse will do with honoring our ancestors. And like we honor our ancestors. Our ancestors came before us. Without our ancestors, we are not here, and that sort of thing. But also, like the Navajo have this thing called corpse dust, where they use the dust from the what is it when they cremation of the corpse of a corpse that they'll use in ceremony, and the Norse did the exact same thing. And that's like, like, I don't know, Utah to Scandinavia and Norway, like how far away is that?
Like, and how far away is that? And it just says that the cultures have similar. There's definitely something in the universe, whether you are.
Well, also going to India, they do the same thing.
Yep. So it doesn't matter where you are. There are similar. The traditions are the same but different. I don't like to say they're exactly the same, but they are.
No, they're not exactly the same.
Similar in some way.
Yeah, almost like at the very base
Yeah.
of the practice, they're similar.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, it seems like a connection in at least the human like experience of the ancient humans.
Yeah.
Versus like the big powers taking over, like the big like popular thing taking over. Like even as a base, there's this real similarity, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know.
No, like I think it's pretty cool just how man has evolved in that, you know.
Yeah.
Spiritual kind of vortex of.
Well, it's funny that like all the technology that comes out nowadays, you know, whatever you want to think of, people making sex robots and iPhones and shit, but still, there's such a big portion of the populace that is going back to nature worship and nature and let's honor our ancestor, let's honor nature, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, back to the real primitive basics of like what did people do before all of this? What did people do before the Industrial Revolution and the establishment of cities and countries and all that, you know? What did the people in the forest do?
Right.
And that sort of thing. I don't know. It kind of gives me hope.
It does it does have to give you a little bit of hope, because it's just like, do we recycle back through? You know, like in a way we do a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like England or Europe, in various parts of Europe, like all the mistakes that we're making now as an American society,
Yeah.
politically, they've already made.
Yeah.
If you look historically wise, they have made them.
Yeah, but they're also making their own fucking mistakes right now.
Right.
They're making a lot of mistakes right
They
now.
are. But like, if you look like politics wise, I think, oh my gosh, how come we just don't learn? And it's like the whole goes back into history repeating itself.
Oh yeah, constantly. It's all cyclical. It's always like running on like a fucking cycle. No matter what it is, like lives or people or like culture or whatever, it's like always like on like a fucking cycle. Like the planets are, like gravity is, you know. But I think we got 2 minutes left, so thank you for coming over.
Yeah, thank you for
hanging out with me. I always love having you come over for like right before Halloween, and we'll talk some occult stuff, talk witchcraft, talk weird shit. So.
And then I get drunk off of 3 beers, and you're like, man, you're not your brother.
Keith's here. He's gonna drive you home. I'm fine with that. And I like seeing your kids, so yeah.
Well, I like your kids too, even though I accidentally bashed one's head across a chair.
Yeah, you did. You did. It's all right. Police have been notified. They'll be on their way. They'll be here to pick you up. All right. Everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. And remember, you can reach Rocket Podcast at rocketpodcast@gmail.com. Also, go to Blackbird Tattoo and Piercing and get tattooed and pierced. And that's it.